Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 SimPilot. Today we are taking a look at a new feature added to the FlyByWire A32NX in Microsoft Flight Simulator. But as ever, if you're flying a detailed A320 simulation, this will be applicable to you as well. It's going to become a bit of a theme as we have so many choices now. So if you're using the tow list, for example, in X Plane 11, this will also work for you. We're taking a look at landing gear gravity extension. This is an important part of the design of an aircraft. It's something that is in all modern commercial airliners, and we're going to look at how we use it in the A320 and why we might use it, what sort of failures might lead to it. So yeah, it's a great new feature they've added, and again, as always, amazing work by the Fly-by-Wire team to get this added in. It's obviously available, like I say, in other simulations. Today I just thought a good excuse to take the Fly-by-Wire for a spin and see how it's been coming along, because lots of hard work and progress has been made with it in recent times as ever. So still an absolutely incredible free simulation of the Airbus. So let's get the A32NX into the air, and then we're going to take a look at that landing gear gravity extension. As ever, I am a real-world Airbus pilot, but none of this is for any real-world use. It's just to give you some extra context on your home simulations. I'd also like to point out now, this video is something that I've had a lot of requests for, where we're going to look at some failures, but this will not cover failure management, as it were. By that I mean the things that we would do to lead to decisions and when we're going to divert, and the whole aviate, navigate, communicate thing. I do have a video on my channel that talks about that. I'll provide a link to it, but yeah, this is going to be focused on the more of the technical aspects of the aircraft and how we might use that system, that specific system, because that's hopefully what you are here to see. Just before we get started, I'd like to remind you about our partnership with Apex Gaming PCs, where we have some custom 320 SimPilot flight simulator computers. We have the Bus and the Manta. You can customize them on the website, and you can use the code 320 SimPilot to get a discount of 5%. You'll also be supporting the channel if you do buy one. Right, let's get on with the video. So let's get ourselves into the air, and we'll get the aircraft flying along the departure, at which point I will discuss the failures. Beautiful rotate law. That's a bit much, bit sporty on the rotation. Positive climb. Gear up. Nav. Beautiful departure out of Naples. Absolutely love it. There's Vesuvius for you. Stunning, stunning stuff. Okay, so let's now imagine we've already begun our descent in towards Rome. It's coming up ahead of us, and we're just in a gradual descent. We've been told to expect some holding. So let's talk about the landing gear gravity extension. That's this handle down here. It's usually in this position. That's where it should be all flight. It's stowed and it's completely tucked away. Now, you're not going to use this normally. In normal situations, we don't use this. It's not routinely used. You can't reset it yourself. If you use it, the airplane needs maintenance and an engineer for sure. So this is how you expect to see it, I'd say over 99.99% of the time, pretty much all the time. But there are some failures where we need to lower the landing gear ourselves. These are rare, but they are certainly something that we train for anyway. A typical one would be hydraulic systems. If we lose the wrong combination of hydraulics, then we are going to have to lower the landing gear ourselves. For example, if we lose the green and blue system, then the landing gear will have to be gravity extended. So there is a speed limit on doing that. And we're going to show you how to do it, but there we go. So that's one failure, and another one I'm just curious to try is the LGCIU. If we lose those, so the LGCIUs are an important part of the A320. When we raise and lower landing gear, you'll actually see the triangles displayed, which will show the fact that they are working. So there are two LGCIUs and they swap over. So we run one and then it automatically swaps over to the other to make sure both are working sort of routinely. So you have options. So if your gear doesn't come down first try, the ECAM will actually direct you to try again, resetting the landing gear, i.e. raising it up, trying to bring it all up again, and then lowering it all again. So that is something that we have to would have to do to swap over the LGCIUs. LGCIU, by the way, this is not the main focus of today's video, but it is the landing gear control interface unit. And of course I didn't have to look that up. I knew that off by heart always. So yeah, landing gear control interface unit, of course I did have to look that up, is are the computers that affect this. They're incredibly complicated, and if you lose one or they go wrong, it can have quite a surprising amount of knock-on effects. What they actually monitor are the landing gear being locked up or down, shock absorbers, are they compressed or extended? So that's the shiny part, the suspension effectively. Are those locked or stuck in position? Because, for example, the gear needs to be fully extended when it's raised. If it isn't, then it won't raise properly or could get jammed, and you don't want that to happen. So these computers are monitoring things like that. They monitor the landing gear doors, of course, yeah, if you have one of the original A320-100s that had the bogies, the 4 landing gear on the main gear, then it would also check if those are aligned. But obviously we haven't seen that design for quite a while. But there we go. So I'm going to try, imagine that we're in our descent waiting for the hold, and I'm going to fail both LGCIUs, and there you go. So we've actually lost them. We lose our gear position indicator. It doesn't know where the gear is. That would also possibly, we'll see if it writes off these lights. Actually, that could be a different source, but yeah, so you get the amber crosses. It doesn't know where the landing gear doors are either. But crucially, we get landing gear, gravity extension, GPWS system off. So the GPWS system would actually have to go off because it's going to now say too low gear, because it doesn't know if the gear's down or not. Hence that goes off. But and by the way, I must stress, this is not how we handle an ECAM warning like this in flight. There's a whole process we would go through. First of all, flying the aircraft safely, checking all the modes are correct, and so on, and checking lots of things. We don't just dive in and do it. But for today's video, there we go. So you can see it's actually recognized it's off. I'm very impressed. This is a great piece of great addition. So the A32NX is really coming along amazingly well. Because to have the ECAM instructions on there as well, absolutely fantastic. And it's brought up the wheel page automatically, which is very cool. So if I reset those, let's imagine we managed to fix them. There we go, that goes away and it goes back to the cruise page. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, let's try out, just to show you what normally happens. We're going to go down to flight 100 as quickly as we can, and we'll just lower the gear at a sensible speed and see, to show you what the indications normally are. Right, so we're now low enough to actually lower the landing gear. The limitation is here, VLE, velocity for landing gear extension, 280 knots, Mach decimal, sorry, velocity with landing gear extended, 280 knots, Mach decimal 67. But we're actually more limited by this one, velocity of landing gear operation. So we can extend the landing gear at 250 knots, we can retract it at 220 knots. So you can be faster when you lower the landing gear, because of course that nose gear, it's going to drop out of the nose and go into the airflow, so the airflow will help it lower the right way. But the retraction means it has to go into the airflow, hence 220 knots is the maximum at lower speed. The velocity with it extended is 280 Mach decimal 67. You can actually go faster once the gear is out, because once the gear doors are closed, it's then safe to accelerate the aircraft. So the limitation for the extension, the 250 knots, is presumably to do with the landing gear doors. So anyway, I'm going to bring the speed back to something sensible, 230. By the way, we never normally lower the landing gear at these speeds. If you did, or you were on board an aircraft that did, you would really know it's incredibly noisy. It's very loud, huge amount of drag. So it makes a lot of noise at these speeds. At the lower speeds, it's not so bad, but there we go. So we're now below the landing gear extension speed of 250 knots, and we're below Mach decimal 67, 280 knots, of course. So let's give it a go. So what we're going to see, I'm going to bring up the wheel page just to show you in advance, and we'll just lower the landing gear. So there we go, landing gear control, amber doors because they're moving, and here's those triangles I was talking about. These are the LGCIU triangles. We only need one set of them to be working to give evidence that the landing gear is in the right place. And there we go, we actually have two. Luckily they're all working. Doors are now closing, hence the amber, and then they're closed, green and green. And we get our 3 triangles up here. Excellent modelling by Fly-by-Wire that we actually have that rumble in the background. I really like that, which it would be very noisy. We're also in open descent, so look how the aircraft now can just dive down. It's like better than the speed brakes. There it is. But nothing wrong with what we've done. Let's now bring the speed back to 210, which we can do, and then once we're back there we can actually raise the landing gear. So speed now below 220 knots, gear up. So notice the sequence, gear comes in. Once the gear is all locked, the doors can then close. The aircraft is very careful about the sequence on the landing gear. It does not want to get it wrong. There have been many incidents of aircraft landing without landing gear or with one of them stuck because of things that get loose or jammed. So the sequence is very carefully controlled and monitored for that exact reason, because obviously landing gear is a very useful thing to have working. So let's now show what happens if we fail one of the LGCIUs. So LGCIU 1 fail, and you'll notice we just get LGCIU 1 fault. The aircraft doesn't really care about this. It's just an amber warning up here. And again, amazing modelling. So impressed that this ECAM is fitted like this. So there it is, LGCIU 1 fault. Then we're going to go to, well, we can clear that out. Again, not the normal sequence. Status page is normal. It's just an advisory. And you'll see here, one side is with amber crosses showing us that one of the LGCIUs. But the other one works just fine. So we could lower the landing gear just like normal here. But here we are. I've now given us 2 faults. We've lost power to LGCIU 2 and LGCIU 1 has an internal error. So this gives us the more concerning warning. And here, of course, I already had that switched off. But there it is, landing gear LGCIU 1 plus 2 fault, landing gear gravity extension. So that's leading us to a QRH procedure that we have to follow. It's very straightforward and it gives us the instructions on using that control. But like I say, there is another fault that would get us here, which would be a dual hydraulic fault, which is a very complex failure, but we won't go into that today. The point being, if you lose electrical or hydraulic control of the landing gear, we can still lower it with this gravity extension. We are just using the weight of the wheels, and they are heavy things, to lower themselves into the airflow. So to do this, what are we going to have to actually do? Well, let me run through it with you now. Well, it's worth noting before you lower the landing gear with your gravity extension that the gear will not be able to be retracted. Once you've lowered it, that's it, it's down. As you saw earlier, there's a huge amount of drag with the landing gear down, so by doing that, you're going to have a huge fuel penalty. So we will be very careful with when we actually apply this. It says, for example, landing gear gravity extension. That doesn't mean we should just go ahead and do it now, potentially. It depends on the situation, because what I don't want to do is burn through all my fuel in advance. Now we actually have plenty of fuel and we're heading into Rome, so we've got plenty of options on runways. But the key thing to remember is, what if you have to go around? So you really want to make sure that this approach will work. So you'll be very carefully briefing it and planning it. You'll let air traffic know maybe that you want the runway to be kept clear for you. You don't want them to be using it like normal when you arrive. Now this isn't a particularly shocking thing to do. This is just us arriving at an airport and flying an ILS, so and lowering the landing gear. So you might think, well, we don't need to declare a Mayday. But then you're going to think, well, what if we don't, or we don't declare a PAN, but then air traffic control carry on using the runway like normal, and somebody in front takes a bit too long to vacate the runway, and then you have to go around, and you've already lowered your landing gear. You've got a huge performance penalty, which in some circumstances may be very unsafe if you've got terrain on the other end. Luckily, we don't today. And you've got the issue of the fact that your fuel burn now. You're going to burn almost 3 times the fuel you would have done as you head round and back in. Remember as well, or in fact, let's move on to what that handle actually does. So what we're going to do with the handle is raise it up. When the time comes, you raise it up. You wouldn't do this in advance. And then you're going to turn it 3 times clockwise. And that is basically it. It's incredibly ingenious. There are other aircraft that have, or like I say, most commercial aircraft have gravity gear extensions that are not as well designed as this. This is a fantastic system. It's very easy to use, very simple, and very robust. So what is this handle actually going to do? So what we're going to do is, when the time comes, lift it up and turn it 3 times. When we do turn it, you're going to isolate the hydraulic system. Then you're going to unlock the gear doors, which are going to then drop down. And then you're going to, with the last turn, you're going to release the locks and allow gravity just to drop the gear down into the extended position. You don't need to do anything clever after that. Airflow and weight will naturally do it. Remember, the nose gear, although it's lighter, will fall into position because of the airflow, will help it, and the main gear is very heavy and will drop out and lock itself into position as well. Very clever stuff, very simple. The gear doors are going to remain open after we've done this, so we, like I say, will have a huge fuel penalty, because when those gear doors are down underneath the aircraft, you've got big holes where the gear sits when it's up. So yeah, very, very huge drag penalty. Right, let's get ourselves onto the approach, and as I said, this is something you would plan in advance and show you that in action. Okay, so here we are now on final approach on the ILS for 16 left at Rome. As you can see, we're about 11 nautical miles out, doing 180 knots. I've just put out flap 2. Our ECAM is still here, asking us for landing gear gravity extension. Of note in the real aircraft is, if you cleared away that ECAM, it would then tell you on the status page as well, landing gear gravity extension. But anyway, so things are obviously not normal, but that's obviously not a feature implemented yet. But still, great to see these ECAMs starting to come through. That's a big part of flying the Airbus. So you don't want to wait too late to do this because, of course, it's not a normal procedure, so it's something we want to get right. So let's go ahead and run it. So I'm going to put up the wheel page just so that you can monitor with me what's going on. So all we have to do is raise the handle up. Dead easy. You just pull it up like that. Then you're going to start to rotate it. So it's 3 turns, 1, and the gears will come down. Sorry, the doors should open on the aircraft, but I'm not entirely sure how it's simulated. And here, oh no, stay up please, and then we're going to run it again. Now you can't run it backwards, so this is a lesson for me. Make sure you have it the right way, and then click it round. So 1, 2, 3. And it won't go any further in the real aircraft. And there it goes. You can hear the rumble. The LGCIUs don't know what's going on, so that was completely pointless me putting the wheel page there. But there we are. Out comes the gear. Notice how slow it is. Fantastic. And it locks into place. And look at that. The gear doors are staying open. What a fantastic piece of modelling by the team. Really, really like it. So here we go. As I was talking about, huge drag. You've got big holes. So if you try to go around now and point this nose up into the air, this is getting into the airflow. And it's like having big speed brakes out. Let's fully configure them for landing. So flaps to 3 and flaps to full. Had no trouble slowing down in that case. We've got low auto brake. Whether or not that would work will depend on the failure you have, I suppose. We should have all our lights on, of course. As I said, not a procedural video this one. We're just looking at how we would use that system. So there we go. The gear is now down and locked. We've used the gravity extension. Fantastic. Now though, it's just a normal landing. There's no extra limitation for the landing gear doors. We're just going to land the aircraft as we would do in a normal day. Ultimately, the aircraft is quite operable with a simple landing gear gravity extension. What we're going to do now then is just
200.
Take out the autopilot and give it a landing.
200.
It's been a while since we've landed the A32NX on the channel, so looking forward to it. Probably noticed that there'll be a bit more thrust on in the real aircraft on final approach because
100.
of that increased drag, but again, I don't think that'll be much compared to the whole landing gear down.
50, 40, 30,
Into the flare,
20, retard,
idle,
10, 5,
and holding it. There's touchdown. It's worth noting that if you're using the Fenix Simulations A320, of course, this feature is also available and modelled. If you go into the MCDU menu, config, and then, oh, I've actually got it on the wrong screen, config, and then you'll see this screen, and you've got manual failures. And then, of course, I'm going to go to the next page. Where's it on that page? Where is it gone? Gear. There it is. Gear. And then you can scroll down and we can have all sorts of failures related to landing gear, including safety valves, things that I'm not entirely sure the implications. Remember, as pilots, we don't go through the technical side of things as much as we learn how to handle the aircraft and the instructions we're given. Of course, we do have a technical base, but the Airbus is an incredibly complicated machine, so you can't have an entire memory in your mind of the schematics of all of the systems and so on. It's just you're not going to be able to successfully work out what's going on in the time frame you'll have, which typically is under an hour before you need to get the aircraft on the ground in lots of cases. Not always, but anyway. So you've got gear failure, so it could be locked up or locked down, and LGCIU. So if you fail LGCIU 1, I do both at the same time, and 2. There you go, 1 plus 2 actually knocks out the auto thrusts. And as I said earlier, there are a lot of associated failures with having this fault. It's quite a serious fault. So the auto thrust is going to come out, so we're going to align it and disconnect it. So we're in manual thrust now, and here we are. So landing gear gravity extension, GPWO system off. So GPWO system Up here it can go off, and pretty much similar. So I'm going to clear out the auto flight, clear out the LGCIU 1+2, and here we go. Here's some of the additional problems. So we've lost the reversers, lost the auto thrust. The engine's going to approach idle only, so that's because they don't know they're on the ground or not, so that it's not allowing it to go into reverse, because it's obviously the aircraft is now not sure when it's on the ground, and it will only go to approach idle. So a bit of a performance limitation here. If you were flying around in winter, wet runway, this could become an issue. Anyway, what I'm here to show you is that, of course, the landing gear can be extended gravity, so you click down on the button on the Fenix to lift it. Let's get our speed back a bit, so we'll drop that to... We can extend the gear at 250, no problem, but again, very noisy. The limit is 250, so we really would like to be a bit below that. Ooh, let's go to our green dot speed of... we'll just over, let's do 230. There it is, and you'll notice again it says landing gear gravity extension, but we have a procedure in the QRH to cover that. Right, definitely below 250. Let's give it a go. So, oh, no, not that. They're all different strategies. There we go. So this one, you actually, instead of clicking to turn, you actually turn it around yourself. So there's the first turn. I wonder if that's done anything. Let's do the second turn. Nothing yet. Now, I don't know if this is realistic or not, frankly, because this is not a procedure. You just do 3 turns is the procedure. And there's the third turn. Oh, there it goes. Doors opening. And look how slow it is. Because this is, of course, gravity extension. So it is not going to be quite as quick and seamless as when the gear can be pressurized and using the hydraulic system. So this is, of course, going to be fighting, I assume, it's fighting residual hydraulic line and just using the weight to fall down. There are then the spring locks to mechanically push it into place. It's all designed to make sure that this procedure works. So it's a reliable backup procedure. This it's not something that works by chance. Notice how slow it is, though. Very cool. I must remember that it is manual thrust, so it's no good me moving the speed around. You'll notice earlier I saw exactly what I did, but dropping the gear has slowed us down anyway to where we wanted to be. So there we go. It's going to take a lot of extra thrust now to hold us here with the gear out, and the door's open. So look at those holes in the fuselage of the aircraft, causing extra drag. So there you go. So it works in the Fenix just fine. So that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I'm not entirely sure what that effect behind the engines is, but yeah, no doubt that's something I've probably set up wrong. But there we go. So hopefully an interesting video for you, looking at one of the first of many failures we can discuss about the A320 aircraft. Hopefully reassuring you as well that the aircraft is very well designed with robust systems, and that is just yeah, a very, very nice version of the landing gear gravity extension that features on a lot of aircraft, but very nicely implemented on the A320. As you can see here, if you see an aircraft taxiing in with the gear doors all down, then that might be a clue that it's had to do a gravity extension of some variety. In the real aircraft, as I said, no limit. They wouldn't scrape it on the floor or anything, as far as I am aware anyway. But certainly maintenance action required on this airplane after a flight like that. And as I said, we wouldn't reset that landing gear gravity extension ourselves, or try to if it hasn't worked or anything like that. We would follow our procedures. Ultimately, if the landing gear gravity extension doesn't work, or you can't confirm it's worked, you're looking at landing with a normal landing gear potentially, depending on the situation, which is a very involved checklist indeed, as you can imagine. But that is, like I say, incredibly rare, far rarer than having to use this, and this is already an incredibly rare situation. There'll be plenty more videos, guides and live streams coming to the channel in future, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see those. We'll also be flying, of course, other airliners and aircraft around the virtual skies, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see that. Otherwise, we'll see you again in another of those videos or live streams. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.